On the one end of the Skoda SUV spectrum in India is the Kodiaq. Launched last year, the SUV has propelled the checks here remarkably. And on the other end of the spectrum is the Skoda Kodiaq. Yes, the Kodiaq is back in the Indian market, but is it back with a bang? I'm Shubhadeep, this is HT Auto, and we're hunting the answer to that question in this episode. So stay tuned. Kodiaq once again sits on the top of the SUV lineup for Skoda, and while it won't really be a volume driver for obvious reasons, it's a show of strong intent yet again. While its petrol engine promises to be its main highlight, the showstopper, its European looks are quite pleasing as well. Now this here is the LNK variant, which is top of the line, so it's obvious that not all that you see here is all that you get in all the variants of the Kodiaq. That said, my favorite highlight is the grille of the Kodiaq. It's tastefully done. There is a whole lot of chrome element, but it doesn't look very jarring. Complementing the grille are headlight units, which are now sleeker, and the DRLs are integrated here as well. Over at the rear, the tail lights are full LED as well, and the SUV now stands on 18-inch alloy wheels, which, among other things, helps the car with a high ground clearance. There are also very strong body lines on the side profile of the vehicle, and you get more chrome all around the window line. I particularly like the large rear quarter glass that we see in this car, but how does that translate into space and comfort on the inside? For that, we need to jump inside this car. Now there's not much point talking about the last row seats because space there is at an absolute premium. The getting in and out part is still relatively easy because the middle row seats have a tumble and fold functionality, but really the space for your feet, the legs, is at an absolute premium. Like I mentioned, there are also no dedicated AC vents for passengers at the rear. You get one 12-volt charging socket and two lights. Now, best place perhaps to plonk your kids, but if they are grumbling a little too much, you can push forward the second row seats a little bit. Now that I have done this, I still find that there is still a decent amount of space for my knee, my legs, and I'm relatively comfortable in the second seat. Of course, if there are no passengers at the rear seats, it's only luggage, then you can push this seat all the way back and there is a whole lot of space. So no complaints on the knee room, the leg room front. Under thigh support is a bit lacking, but the backrest and the headroom is quite great as well. Now what helps matters further is that this car has large windows and a large panoramic sunroof for the elements to play in. If you don't like the sun too much, then you also have these shades that you can pull up. You also get an armrest here in the middle, usual fare with the dedicated cup holders. You get rear AC vents here. You get a 12-volt charging point, but you do not have any USB, either the regular or the Type-C, to charge your phone. Overall, the fit and finish of this car is absolutely top-notch. That translates to the front row as well, because you get the entire dash in a really nice piano black finish. The soft touch materials used on the dash and all the doors is also great. The main infotainment screen is a fingerprint magnet, but other than that, it's really bright and vivid and very, very easy to use. It's very intuitive and responsive to touch. Additionally, you also get a driver display which is large. It functions as a virtual cockpit and puts out all the necessary information. There's not much new to report in the central console, but the 3 dedicated dials for the AC control, the gear lever, and all the buttons to select mode and traction control and parking brake are nicely done. But what you do now get is more storage space and a dedicated phone box. The glove box is really large. Skoda Kodiaq has some very interesting, neat tricks up its sleeves. So you get a dedicated umbrella holder on the driver's side. We're not yet sure, but we're assuming that the umbrella comes as standard. The front 2 seats have heating and cooling functionality. Both seats can also be adjusted 12-way electronically, and both seats also have memory function. But just in case you were wondering, there is no massage functionality. The question then is, do you actually need the massage functionality in a car that promises to be fun to drive? Well, can't wait to test this petrol engine, so let's get a move on. The Kodiaq had to be previously taken off the Indian market when India was transitioning to BS6 norms. Now, of course, it sports a turbocharged petrol engine and hence the comeback. Now, the moment you get a move on in the Kodiaq, certain things become amply clear. Now, before we get to the positives, and there are plenty of those, let's mention some of the negatives that are instantly evident, at least to me. First up, the braking lacks a bit of bite. Now, this can be my personal preference, but I would have ideally wanted a bit more stopping power on the Kodiaq. That's mostly felt by me when I am in mid-range speeds. The stopping power isn't as effective as for me, myself, I would have ideally wanted. I have to press the brake pedal a little too hard. That's one. The second part that I feel that the Kodiaq could have improved is on the body roll front. There is definitely noticeable body roll, especially if you're tackling tight corners at relatively high speeds. That's most felt not in the front row, but in the rows back, especially in the middle row. On the positive side, and there are a whole lot of positives, the engine, the 7-speed DSG transmission are perfectly matched for each other. It's a match made in heaven. Now, the engine specifications, the power output and the torque are all on your screen right now, but what these figures translate to in the real world is a very punchy, in fact, I'll stick my neck out and even say sporty drive experience. The Kodiaq is a 3-row SUV, but it doesn't drive like one. You get enough pulling power. Am I missing the diesel? Not quite. I have always been biased towards petrol engines, but this one is just so much fun to drive. What helps this engine, of course, is that the 7-speed DSG transmission box clicks the numbers pretty well across speed spectrums, and the steering wheel is also very light, so it's nimble. The Kodiaq performs really well when you're trying to weave in and out of traffic. On the flip side though, at triple-digit speeds on open roads, while the straight line stability is great, I would have preferred more feedback from this steering. Now, if you're gunning for luxury, you can't really have a luxurious car if the suspension setup isn't done right. Happy to report that the Kodiaq suspension is really well. It's one of the most impressive suspension units inside a Skoda, and dare I say in a vehicle in this segment that I have experienced. Most of the bad roads, the speed bumps, the speed breakers that this car has encountered, even at some of them at mid speeds, around 60, 70, the Kodiaq has just managed to gobble up everything that the road conditions have had to throw at it. Now, we've driven the Kodiaq in city traffic conditions, with heavy traffic, with bumper-to-bumper traffic, and we've driven it at triple-digit speeds out on open highways, clear roads as well. What the Kodiaq does really well is plays the all-rounders role. It has good command over the drive traits when you're out speeding, gets the move on towards triple-digit speeds, even in comfort mode. And speaking of drive modes, of course, there are multiple ones. The most common that you will use, of course, is the Eco, the Comfort, and the Sport mode. But coming back to what I was saying, even in the comfort mode, this engine gives enough power for a very linear yet punchy drive experience. That this car also has 4x4 capabilities is another feather in its cap. Although we did not take Kodiaq on authentic off-road tracks, the SUV did fare well on broken and muddy road patches. The Kodiaq is available in 3 variants in the Indian market, so you get the car in Style, Sportline and the LNK that you see here. Pricing starts at Rs 35 lakh, goes up to 37.5 lakhs ex-showroom. Remember, this car may seem a little pricey, but it is also being brought in via the CBU route, and the first batch has already been sold out. If you're someone who's already booked a Skoda Kodiaq, I find very few reasons for you to regret that decision. It's a value luxury proposition, and Skoda is gunning for the big players in the luxury segment with the 2022 Kodiaq. What do you make of this car and the review? Do let us know. But in this episode, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for watching.